Welcome to the Deep Dive, your essential shortcut to truly understanding what's driving the headlines. Today we're unpacking a pretty substantial policy shift from one of the world's largest IT services companies, Tata Consultancy Services, or TCS. Our source for this deep dive is a recent news report from the Times of India, and we're really focusing on the excerpts about this new associate deployment policy. Imagine for a moment you're an associate at TCS. As of June 12th, your entire work year just got, well, fundamentally redefined. Our mission today is to dig into what this new policy means for employees, for the company, and why it's generating so much discussion. We're here to give you a crystal clear understanding of its core implications. Okay, let's unpack this.
And it's really crucial to understand these kinds of policy changes, especially in organizations as massive as TCS. They don't just affect internal stuff. They have significant ripple effects across the entire workforce, influencing industry standards, even the broader talent market. It's about optimizing resources, sure, but also how that optimization reshapes the daily lives and careers of hundreds of thousands of people.
That's a powerful point. So let's dive into the core numbers shaping daily life for these employees now. The updated policy lays out some very specific requirements, effective June 12th. First, every associate is now mandated to be billable for a minimum of 225 business days annually. And then there's the flip side, bench time. That period when you're employed but not on a project is restricted to a maximum of just 35 business days per year.
Which is quite a tight window.
It really is. Now, for those of you who might be less familiar with the jargon in IT services, billable simply means you are actively working on a client project, something the company charges for.
You're generating revenue.
Exactly. And bench time? Well, that's when you're on the payroll but waiting for your next project. Historically, it's often been seen maybe as a time for training or just a bit of a breather.
Sort of, yeah. Or internal projects, skill updates.
But clearly, TCS is putting some strict new boundaries on it now.
What's truly fascinating here is that these numbers aren't just pulled out of thin air. This policy, overseen by the Resource Management Group, or RMG, at TCS, it's fundamentally about maximizing organizational utilization.
Organizational utilization.
Their stated goal is to ensure every associate is optimally engaged and allocated to projects at all times. This isn't just general efficiency talk. It likely reflects a tightening global IT services market.
Makes sense.
Where every dollar of revenue is maybe harder won, companies are being pushed to squeeze maximum value from their existing talent pool.
Rather than just relying on getting new projects easily.
Precisely. So it's not just about employees being, physically present. It's about ensuring their time translates directly into quantifiable value and project delivery.
So these strict numbers, they aren't arbitrary, are they? What's the strategic engine behind such a bold move from TCS? The policy's stated aim is to foster a proactive approach towards associate allocation, ensuring both organizational and individual goals are met. That sounds collaborative on paper, but
does it achieve both?
Yeah, does a policy this stringent truly achieve both sides of that equation, or does it fundamentally shift the power dynamic more towards the company's side?
Well, that's a perceptive question. The Resource Management Group, the RMG, led by Chandrasekharan Ramkumar, the global head, they're central to this. Their whole function is workforce deployment matching talent and skills to projects.
Right.
They are constantly focused on maximizing utilization. In a highly competitive market, the thinking is that every resource needs to be, pulling its weight efficiently. The core idea is to eliminate dead time and ensure continuous productivity.
And this brings us to a really critical insight for you, the listener, especially if you're in a similar industry. The policy very clearly states that if you are unallocated, it is now your primary responsibility to proactively engage with the unit regional RMG for seeking allocation.
Your primary responsibility.
Yeah, and take initiative towards pursuing suitable opportunities provided by the organization. That's a pretty strong statement, isn't it? It really shifts things.
It absolutely does.
It moves from maybe waiting to be assigned to actively campaigning for your next project internally.
It fundamentally reshapes the dynamic. What might have traditionally been a more passive waiting period where you expected the company to find the next project for you. Well, that's changed. It's transformed into an active role for the unallocated associate. You are now expected to be an active participant in your own deployment.
Right.
It implies that being on the bench is no longer a passive state. It's an active period of self-management and essentially internal job seeking within the organization. This shift underscores a really strong emphasis on individual accountability.
And digging deeper, the policy outlines even more specific expectations for associates while they're unallocated. It goes beyond just actively seeking new projects. They're expected to spend a significant chunk of their day, like 4 to 6 hours daily, on relevant learning.
4 to 6 hours. Wow.
Yeah, via TCS's internal learning platforms, systems like iEvolve, FrescoPlay, VLS, and also external ones like LinkedIn Learning. To give you a sense of what that looks like on the ground, imagine having to devote almost half your workday to learning, even when you're technically on the clock, all while actively hunting for your next internal project. It's intense.
It really is. That's practically another job on top of finding a job.
And the expectations don't stop there. They also need to complete all mandatory and prioritized training, attend in-person sessions recommended by RMG, and actively upskill to stay interview ready.
Interview ready. That's a key phrase.
It is. The policy even mentions using a Gen AI interview coach.
Oh, interesting. Like an AI practice tool.
Seems like it.
Right.
Like something to simulate interviews, give feedback, plus reviewing and addressing feedback from past interviews. And all training programs must be completed on time, full attendance.
Wow.
It sounds like a full-time job just staying prepared. You might wonder if they're building an army of LinkedIn Learning black belts rather than project teams.
Well, this mandated rigorous self-improvement during bench time, it's almost certainly a direct response to the evolving market demands.
Okay.
Companies like TCS need their workforce to be agile, adaptable, with skills that are constantly up to date. In a fast-changing tech landscape, there's just little room for static skills.
So it's about readiness.
Exactly. It's about ensuring rapid deployment capabilities and maintaining a competitive edge. Having a pool of highly skilled, immediately deployable talent, it definitely pushes individuals to be continuously relevant, though.
Though it adds a new layer of pressure, absolutely.
No doubt.
And to facilitate that swift deployment, the policy has a pretty firm stance on physical presence. The physical presence in the office is mandatory.
Ah, the return to office push?
Seems like it. This means those work-from-home exceptions and flexible arrangements that became so common, well, they're generally not applicable anymore, according to this policy.
That's right. While the policy does mention a small allowance for short-term flexible work options for personal emergencies.
If you get prior approval.
Yes, with prior RMG approval. But the overarching message is crystal clear. Be physically present. Be ready to be deployed. This really highlights that tension, doesn't it? Between the push for organizational efficiency and the growing employee desire for flexibility, it raises an important question for you, the listener. How does this mandate square with the broader global trend towards hybrid work models?
It certainly seems to run counter to it in some ways. So, okay, if an associate doesn't meet these expectations, what happens? The policy is pretty clear about the adverse impacts of long periods of remaining unallocated.
And these aren't just vague warnings.
No, these aren't just HR buzzwords, are they? These sound like career-defining impacts.
Right.
Affecting associate compensation.
Right. Pay could be hit.
Career growth, avenues for overseas deployment in the future, and even, and this is the big one, continuity of employment with the organization.
That phrase, continuity of employment, that's serious. It implies job security is on the line.
It sounds like it. That's a serious list of potential consequences.
Indeed. And these consequences, they directly tie back to the company's overarching goal of maximizing utilization. It's pretty blunt.
How so?
Well, from a corporate perspective, unallocated resources represent significant costs without corresponding revenue. Simple as that.
Right.
The severity of these impacts is designed to enforce accountability and ensure that every employee is contributing to the company's billable capacity. It emphasizes that employment isn't just about being on the payroll, it's about active, measurable contribution.
So it's not just about maybe losing a bonus.
No, it seems far beyond that. It's about the very real possibility of being sidelined for career-defining opportunities or, worst case, facing potential job loss. That's the underlying message.
Another interesting detail that stuck out from the source, the policy also discouraged frequent short-term allocations to multiple projects.
Ah, so jumping around isn't encouraged either.
Right. It states that this may lead to HR investigations and appropriate disciplinary measures. It seems they want committed long-term project engagement rather than associates sort of bouncing between assignments.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's likely about stability and efficient project delivery. Trying to avoid the overhead costs and disruption of frequent handovers and ramp-ups that happen with short-term gigs.
That makes sense from an efficiency standpoint.
And the source also included a poll, which I thought was quite telling. It asked, do you think strict deployment policies improve workforce efficiency? The options were yes, they drive accountability and productivity, or no, they increase pressure and reduce flexibility.
That really sums up the two sides of the coin, doesn't it?
Perfectly. It encapsulates the core dilemma. On one hand, these policies are absolutely designed to drive accountability and productivity, pushing employees to be highly effective. On the other hand,
On the other, they can certainly increase pressure and potentially reduce the flexibility and autonomy that, frankly, many modern employees really value.
exactly that tension.
So how do we weigh the impact of all these elements? To quickly summarize for everyone listening, TCS's new policy is laying down some strict markers. Mandatory 225 billable days a year, a cap of just 35 days on bench time, and a significant shift in responsibility to the associate for their own allocation and continuous upskilling.
A very active role required from the employee.
Definitely. And if you don't meet these targets, the consequences are severe, ranging from impacts on your pay and career all the way, potentially, to your employment itself. Plus, that emphasis on being physically in the office for swift deployment, it's back with a vengeance.
Ultimately, policies like this, they really reflect a company's strategic response to intense market dynamics and the ongoing challenge of resource management. It's what large service companies grapple with constantly. They aim to balance corporate efficiency and profitability with, ideally, employee engagement and development. It's a dynamic tension, and right now, the emphasis here is clearly leaning towards optimizing the workforce for maximum output in a competitive environment.
And that leads to a provocative thought for you, our listener, to ponder. How might a policy like this, which so strongly emphasizes continuous upskilling and proactive engagement, how might it reshape the very nature of employment in these large-scale service industries?
Interesting question.
Could it be pushing individuals to be not just employees, but almost, well, self-managing entrepreneurs of their own skill sets within the corporate structure, constantly responsible for their own marketability and deployment?
Always needing to prove their value, essentially.
Something to consider as these trends evolve. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.